Indeed. Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Minister. I just wanted to go back to this subject of the cross-party talks. And you set out, I guess, some of the way that the government interpreted Labour's priorities and objectives going into those talks. Do you feel that the Labour side entered into those talks in good faith?
Yes, I do. Not only because that's what they said to us directly, but there were 8 plenary meetings of the 2 negotiating teams, in addition to separate meetings between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition and what we term working groups, where particular ministers and shadow ministers went off and tried to resolve one or two dossiers outside the plenaries. And those meetings usually took a couple of hours apiece, so there was a lot of senior level time, energy, not to mention the preparation by our officials and advisors, which I think means people were taking it seriously. Yeah, there was certainly, particularly at the start of the first meeting, there was quite a lot of feeling our way, I think, from both sides, because this was not the sort of scenario that any of us were used to. It's not between the 2 big parties at Westminster, but I think that the intentions were serious on both sides.
When you look at the product, I guess, of the talks, which was the withdrawal agreement bill, even though the talks had collapsed, but I think a couple of days later, the government published the withdrawal agreement bill. There was a sort of list of those 10 points summarising what had shifted and changed. Do you think that the government had moved to a place where it would have been reasonable to expect the Labour side to accept what was, in the end, the content of the withdrawal agreement bill as proposed by the Prime Minister? I mean, I think obviously it's important to focus on these words, yes, good faith and reasonable, yes, which are quite subjective terms. But in terms of as you say, quite a distance between the 2 sides, the negotiations, the product which was put on the table. Are you disappointed by Labour's decision not to accept the terms of the withdrawal agreement bill and to reject it?
Yeah.
And do you feel that that was a reasonable decision that Labour made?
I mean, that last question, I think, is one to put to my Labour counterparts. But I thought, to answer Mr. Kinnock's sort of question, I thought that we had made a good offer. I think it would not have been reasonable to expect the government to go further on a confirmatory vote than to guarantee parliamentary time
at committee
for
stage,
that. It could be committee of the whole House or both committee and report. I think our private view was that it seemed unlikely at the time we were having those talks that there would be a majority for a second referendum. I might have been right or wrong about that assumption, but we thought the right way forward was the House to come to a decision, not for the government to change its position. On customs, we felt that both sides actually were wanting what we termed sometimes the benefits of a customs union, to have trade between UK and the EU without tariffs, without quotas, without rules of origin declarations and bureaucracy. Where we differed was that the government believes that we can do that and still have the freedom to pursue an independent trade policy. It obviously would be affected by whatever we had agreed in practice in phase 2 with the EU, where the future FTAs were compatible with that. But we could have that additional freedom, whereas I think that the Labour Party view was that the better way forward, their judgment for the country, was to be part of EU negotiations and to try to construct some kind of say for the United Kingdom in those. Now, we had our views on how practical that objective was. And each side probably said the other was asking for something that it was not practical, could not be achieved. But that's where those in summary, I think, where the key differences were.
Thank you. And did you provide the Labour side with written proposals and written material to support the negotiations?
Yes.
And what was the content of those documents?
We set out, at different stages, we proposed different formulations. We also tried to craft position papers that we thought, might represent where there was a landing ground between the two sides. Now, Labour Party have then come back and sort of critique some of this. So we actually might be happy with this line, but this bit, we don't think fairly represents where we're coming from. So yeah, but there were documents that were. Which these were work. As I say again, these were not things that had cabinet or shadow cabinet approval. These were, if you like, working negotiating papers, because some of we were into a discussion that involved legislation, that involved possible changes to the political declaration that we might seek jointly from the European Union. And therefore, there's no avoiding the need to set words down on paper so that everybody's clear about what is or is not proposed.
Would you be prepared to share those papers with the committee?
Well, I think what I would say is that if, after this meeting, if the chair were to write to me formally after committee discussion, I would consider that. I would need to. The qualification I must say is that these were, treated by both sides as confidential talks. I don't think that we did not either side, I think, set out to leak what was in those papers. So I think I would want to talk both to Labour representatives, but also to those other ministers who were on the negotiating team, just to see what we could provide. But I would seek to be as helpful to the committee as I could be.
Well, subject to the chair's confirmation, I think it would be very useful and interesting to see those papers. One final question on this issue of the customs union. I mean, what was finally proposed in the withdrawal agreement bill, in essence, is a customs union in all but name until the general election. So the deal was, of course, you go into the next general election and each party would be welcome to take a position on the customs union, put that into its manifesto, and Labour may well campaign for a more permanent and off-the-shelf version of the customs union. The Conservative Party might do something else. I mean, that is a reasonable position, isn't it, to say, well, in essence, it's this is a compromise whereby we make this arrangement to enable us to leave the European Union with a deal, but of course there is a general election coming at some point, and the two parties can campaign on a different platform should they wish to do so. That's your understanding of what was being proposed.
That's right. It was in effect saying to the opposition that we can't completely bridge the differences between us. So part of the solution is let's leave with the deal, and as Mr. Kinnock says, it is the formulation that we agree is framed in such a way as to give each party the opportunity to seek a mandate for the particular model of a future customs relationship with the European Union that party prefers.
Thank you very much.